Welcome to the interview on France 24. I'm Philip Crowther in Washington. Today we're at the International Monetary Fund for the group's annual meetings together with the World Bank here in the US Capitol. And our guest today is the Managing Director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde. Madame Lagarde, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Let's
Welcome.
first take a look at the global economy. It is an optimistic picture that you're painting on behalf of the IMF. There's a global recovery going on right now in 70% of the globe, according to your figures, which begs, of course, the question, what's going wrong in the other 25%?
First of all, it's the first time in a decade that we have such a strong and broad-based recovery, which is something to celebrate. But not everybody has the benefit of that recovery. And you are right that in GDP terms, 25% of the countries are not having the benefit of recovery. And there are regions of the world where people on a per capita GDP are seeing a decline of their income. So our message today to the finance ministers, to the governors of central banks is the sun is shining for many of you. Take advantage of that to fix the roof so that the recovery is sustainable. And to those who do not have the benefit of the sun is take the policy measures that will actually improve the position. And in that category, you have countries of sub-Saharan Africa in particular. There are 12 of those countries that are there, and a few countries in emerging markets as well.
You just mentioned sub-Saharan Africa. I just wanted to have a look with you at one sector of the economy, of the global economy in particular, and one geographic area in particular. According to IMF figures, out of 34 emerging and developing economies, 21 are oil exporters. Oil prices aren't doing all too well. Nigeria has suffered, for example, but also the CMAC countries, Cameroon, Chad, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, the Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. What is in store for them? Is there an upswing coming for those countries as well?
You know, for those countries, we are in strong partnership with them in order to implement a strategy. And that strategy is, for most of them, not so much Cameroon, because Cameroon is a bit more diversified than the other five. But for the other five in particular, to move towards diversification of their economy, to be less oil dependent, because while the price of oil has gone up a little bit, it's not going to go back to the $100 per barrel that we saw a few years back. So they need to diversify their economy. They need to consolidate their public finance. And what we are trying to do is to help them along that way in order to secure a more stable and a more prosperous zone.
Well, out of those economies, 4 countries have signed deals with the IMF, Cameroon, Gabon, Chad, and the Central African Republic. They will get financial assistance in exchange for economic reforms. But there are 2 who have not yet signed a deal. Equatorial Guinea and the Republic of Congo are missing. Why is that, and are things going to get worse for those 2 specific countries?
In our view, it's critically important that they be part of that group. And I think that the leaders of those 2 countries understand that. We are in negotiations with both Equatorial Guinea and the Republic of Congo authorities. They are coming to the IMF this week. We will continue the discussions. I very much hope that we can conclude that process efficiently. It's a question of having, access to the right documents, an understanding of the numbers, the proper analysis of the debt on the basis of the actual debt and not the initial numbers that we were given. So that's the sort of work that we're doing with these authorities, and we will continue doing so.
Let me mention France quickly, if I may. The French President Emmanuel Macron is facing protests and strikes right now back home in France for you as well. This is because of his tax reforms, because of his labor law reforms. What would you say to those in France right now who are saying that what he's doing is taking money from the poor and wanting to give money to the rich?
I think that's an oversimplification of what is happening. What we are seeing is a series of reforms. And I think it's in that continuum that they should be analyzed, understood, and communicated. Because ultimately, our understanding of the proposed reforms is to make sure that France can leverage its potential, that it can grow better and further, and that growth benefits all. So I think, I've gone through my reforms when I was finance minister. I would hope that people can understand that it's a series of reforms, and that they do not get sort of stopped on one particular piece of legislation. It's the whole process that is important. If I look at the labour reforms, for instance, it's a combination of what has just happened in terms of reform of the labour code, which was necessary. I said that back in 2005, so I can repeat it happily. But also what is currently under negotiations concerning the unemployment benefits, concerning the training that is so badly needed in order to adjust to technological changes. So it's the whole combination of that which has to be analysed, and where people have to make up their mind as to whether or not they welcome those changes.
So you have trust right now in what the French president is doing?
It's not a question of trust from the IMF perspective. It's a question of, is it good for the economy? Is it good for a more sustainable, more equal growth? And it seems to be heading in that direction.
Now, something that's been making headlines here at the IMF this week is the fact that your organization is now saying that cutting taxes for the wealthy could produce more inequality worldwide. That is something that appears to go in contrary to what US President Donald Trump is proposing as part of his tax reform. According to most analysts, there would be advantages for the wealthiest. Can you get behind Donald Trump's plans when it comes to tax reform right now?
We are not, and I am not commenting on a proposed reform which is going to go through the iteration and amendment process, and which is very preliminary in its set of proposals. Many of the numbers are not clear, the thresholds are not there, the rates are uncertain. So it would be completely foolish on my part to actually propose to analyze and pass judgment on what is actually pending. But I will say this, our Fiscal Affairs Department has actually done analytical work which determines that because the tax overall rates have gone way down from the 60-ish% down to the 30-ish% in a matter of 30 years. What they have analyzed is that increasing at the highest bracket the tax rate is not going to damage growth. That's the finding of theirs. And if policymakers pursue, as they should for some, the reduction of excessive inequalities, which we have determined is not conducive to sustainable growth, then they should use that tool as well as many others.
Now, this is not a hypothesis for the US right now, but can the IMF get behind a tax reform plan generally that might have advantages for the richest?
It has to be analyzed in its globality. It's a question of whether the country is in a deficit situation, has a high level of debt, whether the economy is at full potential, and what the impact of the various tax measures will be. So I can't tell you in abstract, oh yes, that is good, or no, that is not good.
Let's stay with the United States. There is a proposal for tax reform. There are also proposals for a lot of deregulation in the United States. Some of it already has been put in place by Donald Trump. He wants to get rid of a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape. That seems to be a lot of what the IMF has stood for in its history and over the last few years. So I need to ask you, are you an ally of Donald Trump?
We have never been the advocates of red tape or bureaucracy.
Getting rid of it.
Getting rid of it. Okay, so I misunderstood your question. Yes, of course. We think that streamlining, eliminating red tapes, reining bureaucracy in order to leverage an economy is necessary. It's particularly necessary, by the way, in those countries where corruption or lack of governance actually is facilitated by the multiple point of entries and the red tape that is applicable. So in that respect, yes, it is a good proposal, which doesn't mean to say that we have to throw everything away, because financial regulations, for instance, was actually necessary in order to re-establish a banking sector that would be efficient, that would not expose our economies to risks, and that would facilitate the financing of the economy. So there are regulations and regulations. There is the unnecessary excessive red tape type, which we certainly would encourage removal of. And then there is the necessary framework within which the financial system can hold together.
If you don't mind, we'll just go back to Europe just for one question. The outlook for Spain from the IMF is pretty positive,
yes.
3.1% growth this year alone. But considering the political upheaval right now in Spain and in Catalonia, is it time already to maybe reassess that? Is there a serious risk for the Spanish economy, first of all, and for the European economy as a whole because of what is going on in Spain right now?
You know, the development of the Spanish economy is actually a success story. Story of implemented reforms, of determination by the policymakers to get to the bottom of some of the issues that this economy had in the past. What is happening at the moment is certainly something that we hope to see being resolved between the various participants, and it is a Spanish affair that concerns Spain. The sooner it is resolved, the better, because uncertainty is never conducive to financial stability, to growth, to investment. Spain has been a fantastic destination for investors. We've seen it. Investment has picked up enormously. Uncertainty is not good for that.
Finally, then, are you calling for negotiations between the Catalans and the Spanish?
This is an affair that concerns Spain. The IMF is not in a position to make any recommendations, apart from please resolve the uncertainty.
Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Pleasure.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching the France 24 interview with the Managing Director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde. Please do stay tuned to France 24.